Briefly again, a little breakdown of how the gospel called John works. An outline of the structure. The first part is the prologue, the hymn of the Logos, a poem about the Messiah's cosmic status. John chapter 1, verse 1 through 18. We've spent 5 weeks on this prologue. Everything the author of John wants to tell us is in the prologue. Everything after the prologue is just rehash. There's no new information given. The second part of John is the book of signs, which is what we're going to be getting into next week, the narrative of John proper, chapter 1, verse 19 to chapter 12, verse 50. The third part is the book of glory, which begins with the foot washing at the final supper of Jesus and goes all the way through the passion and post-resurrection appearance to Thomas in chapter 20, verse 31. So chapter 13, verse 1 through chapter 20, verse 31. That's the original end of the gospel in its original form. But the beloved disciple died, the author of this text and this charismatic leader of this Jesus group. And so the group felt that it was necessary, to craft an epilogue, an appendix to the text, which is what chapter 21 is. Chapter 21 addresses the death of this charismatic figure. It offers a Johannine Jesus group attestation to the beloved disciple, the author, the anonymous author we call John, his veracity. Chapter 21, verse 1 to 25. His witness is true. And then there's a fifth part that we're going to look at last when we get through all of these studies. And that is a later insertion that's shoehorned into the text. John chapter 7 through verse 53 through chapter 8, verse 11. The great story about Jesus rescuing the woman caught in adultery. That's a wonderful story. It doesn't belong in John. It was fitted in, shoved into the text. It breaks the flow. It's from a different author, a different community. But it was too good to lose. So that somebody felt in the 2nd century, you have to fit it somewhere, and they jammed it in. Today, as the last several weeks, we're going to be focused on what's in red there on the screen. So let's get to it. John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18 has a lot to say about light. For the ancient Mediterranean person, light was the presence of light, and darkness was the presence of darkness. What that means is that for our biblical ancestors in the faith, including the author of John and Jesus, both light and darkness were considered to be positive entities, positive beings, having no relationship to any source of light or source of darkness other than themselves. Darkness was not the absence of light. That's how they saw things. Let me see if I can explain that to you. For the ancient biblical author and the biblical character, the sun did not cause daylight. And the moon and the stars did not cause the lights that were present at nighttime. The effects of the sun, moon, and stars, they believed, were unrelated to the effects produced by day and night. For them, the sun, moon, and stars are full of light, greatly honored. On the other hand, for them, the ancient biblical author or ancient biblical Mediterranean personality, it's the day that emits daylight. And what daylight is a property of the solid, crystalline, or metallic sky vaults, the surface of which emits daylight. The sun was full of light, but they imagined that if you could move the sun away, the sky would still emit daylight. Interesting. Very interesting. This is also true even if an eclipse happened. If an eclipse happened, somehow the powers of night were taking over. The sky vault, not just the sun. How fascinating. So for them, the sky vault has these properties which makes it shine daylight. So day was one thing, the sun was a ruler of the day, but not the producer of the daylight. The night, too, emits night dark, so they thought. Just like light is a ray that comes at you, right? So they also believed that darkness was a ray that came at you. That darkness was a positive being. It was not the absence of a positive being, light. Darkness was actually a thing to them. People's eyes who have healthy eyes emit light, and that way they can see. Blind people's eyes emit night dark, and people didn't want to go anywhere near those people. So the night sky, the sky vault, right, also has properties which can emit another kind of ray, not just daylight, but night dark. That is the sky vault shining darkness, unrelated to some supposed lack of light. Can you see that these people think, perceive, understand, and communicate reality very differently than we do? Please understand that the author of the gospel we call John perceives reality and interprets reality this way.
So what would happen if they see a shooting star?
Oh, we're getting there. Hold on to that. Stick a pin in that. Darkness to them was the presence of dark, not the absence of light. Day and night, our biblical ancestors in the faith were simply considered to be the structured framework in which the sun and moon operated. Likewise, when the sun and moon marked the changing, while the sun and moon marked the changes of the seasons, while the sun and moon marked the changes of the seasons, they didn't believe that the sun and moon had any influence over the seasons, any more than the sun influenced the day or the moon influenced the night. The relative darkness of winter, they believed, was due to the cloudy sky, not the low path of the sun. In fact, ancient Mediterraneans like John and his audience looked at the sun and they considered the sun and noted the sun for its warmth rather than its light. Light was present due to the presence of light itself, not to the presence of the sun. This meant that the onset of celestial light over the sky vault, through the sky vault over the land, was the dawn, not the sunrise. And the coming of celestial darkness through the sky vault over the land was considered the dusk, not the sunset. Sunrise, sunset didn't bring about this light. So they thought. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et eretz. In the beginning created Elohim the sky vaults and the earth. V'haya eretz ayata tohu vabohu. The earth, the eretz, was tohu vabohu, formlessness, emptiness, with darkness over the tehom, the abyss, and the ruach Elohim, sweeping over the waters. Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Then said Elohim, let there be a dome, rakia, in the middle of the waters, to separate one body of water from the other. Elohim made the dome, and it separated the water below the dome from the water above the dome. That's the sky vault, folks, I'm talking about. Not sky, not heaven, sky vaults. Shamayim, Uranoi. And so it happened. God called the dome sky vaults, Shamayim. Evening came and morning followed the second day. God hasn't made the sun, and yet there's evening and there's morning. See how that can be? Genesis 1, verses 9 to 10. Then said Elohim, let the water under the sky vaults be gathered into a single basin, so that the dry land may appear. Look at the image. And so it happened. The water under the sky vaults was gathered into its basin, and the dry land appeared. Elohim called the dry land earth, and the basin of the water he called sea. Elohim saw that it was good. So we're looking at Genesis here, and we see a very different way of looking at reality, one that goes right through the Bible, about the relationship between light and dark. In the priestly story of creation, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 2, verse 4a, composed sometime in the 5th century BCE, around 400 BCE, after Israel had experienced the Babylonian captivity and much Persian influence, the creation of light set itself apart from pre-existing darkness. In the mind of the creator of this story, the human writer of this story, God doesn't really invent darkness, does he? Darkness already exists. So in the story, by creating light, light is separated from pre-existing darkness. And in the mind of this author, who's not writing science, folks, the creation of land, dry land, the earth, eretz, set it apart from an already ever-present existing water. So in his mind, in the original form of this story, God exists at the beginning, so also waters. So also dark, which is seen as a real being. Look. In this creation myth, the darkness was an already existing thing, and the waters an already existing thing. You see that? Note that in this creation myth is that which will always be true and never happen. Light, day, was created before the sun, and night existed before the moon. Again, dawn or morning and dusk or evening occur independently of the sun as well. In this way, our ancient ancestors in faith looked at things. The presence of light and land, earth, Adamah, allowed for the coming of Hadam, earthlings, humankind, literally groundlings. Genesis 2 verse 7. Then formed Yahweh Elohim Hadam out of the dust of Hadamah. See the wordplay? Hadam, humankind, the groundling, the earthling. Out of Hadamah, the ground, the earth. And blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. This is another creation myth. Job chapter 33, verse 30. Bringing back his life from the pit to the light, in the light of the living. Look at the relationship between light and life. Ooh, sorry. Keep hitting this thing. And it keeps doing that. Keeps doing that. Psalm 56, verse 14. For you have snatched me from death, kept my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of the living. Light and life, darkness and death. There's a relationship. Earthlings, human and otherwise, were believed to be created from the earth. When they saw an animal die, if it wasn't buried, what happens to the body? It collapses and collapses and collapses and eventually becomes dirt, right? As it rots away. This is a simple pre-scientific understanding of the process of death and decay, decomposition. Life was animated with the breath of life and endowed with the light of life, or living light, opposed to the light of the sky vault, the stars. Thanks to their living light, animate beings can see. Sight consists, according to our biblical ancestors in the faith, of light emanating from the eyes of living beings. Our ancient ancestors in the faith and all ancient people believed that the human heart was the source of the light that is found in the eyes. Light comes from the heart, travels up through the body, and goes out the eyes like lamps. The light begins in the heart, shines out through the eyes. See this understanding of eyesight? It was unknown by our biblical ancestors in the faith. Ancients did not know that light comes into the eye. They thought light originates in the heart, comes out through the eyes, instantaneously goes out into the world, and whatever it touches, it can see. You see by this light. Whatever the light touches connects back to the source which emanates the light, which is your heart.
Is it the reason they couldn't see as well at night is because darkness was covering?
Darkness covers. Yeah. Yeah, you're getting it. Darkness is not the absence of light. See that? That's how they imagined it. Okay, so just as the main humanly controlled source of light is fire, so too it is because the eyes were believed to be, listen, made of fire, that humans can see. Our blessed Lord Jesus thought this of our eyes, human eyes. The Matthean Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body. Right? What does that mean? It's exactly what I'm describing. But he's God, he's Jesus, he can't get things wrong like in science. Folks, we have to take the in incarnation seriously. Into what? Into a different cultural situation. Very brilliant mind. Aristotle observed, quote, "It is because in shame the eyes are chilled, for shame resides in the eyes, so that they cannot face another person. Quote, sight is made from fire and hearing from air. Quote, vision is fire. The mainly human-controlled source of light was fire. So too it is because the eyes are made of fire that the ancient believed he or she could see. Similarly, the Israelite tradition believed God's sky servants, other than human persons called angels, constellations and stars and shooting stars in the sky. When they looked at those phenomena, they thought those were non-human persons residing in the sky vaults. And in the Israelite tradition, they believed that these beings were composed of fire, which means they could see everything that goes on the earth because they're full of fire and therefore they're full of eyes, like in the book of Revelation. Hence, when they appear to humans, like in the post-resurrection accounts, in alternate states of consciousness, the brains of these humans interpret them according to the tradition as looking brilliantly, like brilliant light. Here you go, Rose. The fact that celestial bodies such as stars and comets emanate light meant to our ancient ancestors in the faith that they were alive. Stars, whether constellated or not, were believed to be living animate entities, indeed other than human persons, as all ancients knew. In other traditions, the gods. In Israelite tradition, lesser deities called angels, God's sky servants. His Downton Abbey in the sky. His fancy entourage. And that's why they believed they moved while the earth stood still at the center of creation. They moved because they were alive, animate beings. Since all living beings have light, light and life go hand in hand. John chapter 1 verse 4. What took place in him was life, and the life was the light of humankind. That takes on new meaning for you now, doesn't it? In this perspective, all light and life have their origin in the creative work of God alone. They can be handed on by humans, light and life, but they cannot be created by humans. Let's stop there.